Hang in there. It is.
Smylie Kaufman for 61. Wow.
I'm Smylie Kaufman, and this is The Smylie Show.
Welcome back to another episode of The Smylie Show, and an eventful one because, Lordy, Smylie, we have a lot of things to recap. We have to start first and foremost with a very, very happy Mother's Day to your wife, Francie, to my wife, Amanda, to all the amazing mothers out there who allow us to go play golf for multiple hours and hang with the boys while they watch the kids and do it with a smile on their face. And also sometimes watch Rory McIlroy absolutely lapping the field, Quail Hollow on a Mother's Day. So we're very appreciative to them. But with that said, we have to just hit the air horns, sound the alarms, because the one and done heater that was on life support is taking a big shot in the arm, courtesy of your pick, Rory McIlroy. 6 of our last 12 for the show. Smylie, your comments.
I just finally am happy that I saw the light again. You know, I think there was a voice talking to me a couple of weeks ago, and I think it started when we saw Rory win in Zurich. And I was like, you know what? The smile on his face and how happy he was, the karaoke after, the bounce at a step, Yeah, well, the bounce is never really left, but the bounce is back. But I think just he's confident in his mechanics. First off, I think that's one thing to talk about is how good he drove it, how good he looked over the ball. His swing looked amazing. But I think we got to look at that Shane Lowry and the team's win that they had in New Orleans. And I just think he's playing the game right now. It just looks like he's having fun with it. I think even when he got to the tee boxes on Saturday and Sunday and greeted Xander was just like ready for battle. And Roy's like, "What's up, man?" Like looking like he was, good to see you. It just seemed like he was enjoying himself. And I think he played that way. He played free. And my goodness, I did not expect to see what we saw Sunday, which was a runaway victory by Roars.
On the one and done aspect, some updates there. As we've been tracking in the 12 weeks since we started this pool, if you and I were players, if our picks were FedEx Cup players, the current FedEx Cup standings, there are big alarms here. There's been a big move in the standings because Scottie Scheffler is still first. That hasn't changed and probably will not change. You are now in second place in the FedEx Cup. You've surpassed me. You've got a lead of a couple hundred points. I am now in third place. So we're still there in the top 3, but man, the one and done run, we're back. We're looking forward to some PGA Championship picks this week. Maybe we could pull ahead of Scottie. It would be nice to see that. But in the rest of this episode, because we have a packed episode for you, we're going to talk a little bit about this Wells Fargo result and Rory and the implications for the second major of the year. But after that, you had an awesome conversation with Bob May, runner-up to Tiger Woods at the 2000 PGA Championship at Valhalla. So that's going to be the middle piece of this sandwich of an episode. And then the latter piece of bread, we should call it, will be us rounding up on, for me, the Pepe Silvio web of what's happening with the PGA Tour Policy Board, transaction subcommittee, the whole prequel to the week of Rory, because it all somehow comes back to Rory this week. So that's the kind of layout of the episode for you. But let's get back to Rory's win. And for me, it could not have come at a better time to have a win like this, because it injects some intrigue back into a championship where all of us were kind of thinking, is Scottie's going to win the Grand Slam, isn't he? We have some reports on Bob Herrig, kind of soft reporting that baby watch for baby Scheffler might be over. The baby, may or may not have arrived. It's not his news to share, he says, but we think the baby's arrived and the Scottie should be in Louisville playing in the second major of the year. So we have that piece. But this, to me, Smylie, kind of reminded me, not exactly, but in a small way, of where we were last year, where John Rahm just was a bulldozer the first, quarter or third of the year, and we were just wondering how many majors he was going to win. And then Scottie wins the Players, and some other players start playing well. Wyndham Clark, wins the Wells Fargo last year, and some guys are in the mix. And it feels like Rory's win this week is a little bit of, okay, game on. This isn't just going to be a Scottie walkover every single week. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think as we head to Valhalla, a place in which he's won the last PGA Championship, I think, yeah, dude, all systems go for Rory at Valhalla. Look at the weather next week. It started off last week when I checked the 7-day forecast. Didn't look great. A lot of rain. It's gotten a little bit better, but still, it just when you think wet golf courses, you think Rory McIlroy. I mean, look how high and long he was hitting his drives this week at Quail Hollow, and what an advantage that would be if he's got the long and straight ball with the driver. But I think we can't dismiss plenty of the live golfers that are going to have an opportunity to win this. But who knows what type of form Scottie's going to show up in as far as just his mental aspect of the game, which I think has been a reason why he's been on such an incredible run, is that his processes and how he's been able to hit golf shots over and over consistently and be able to make the putts he needed to. I personally don't see a Scottie win at the PGA Championship.
Okay.
I really do think it's going to come from somebody other than Scottie. I have a pretty big group of guys right now, but I tell you what, at the top of that list right now, it's hard not to see one of either Rory, Jon Rahm, or Brooks Koepka being one of those three guys.
I loved Ludwig Oberg, as we discussed after the Masters, but I'm second guessing that a little bit after the WD this week with the knee injury. Not sure what the severity of that was, if it was just sort of a precautionary thing so he could feel like he was at 100% this next week in Valhalla, or if there's something more serious going on there. As you mentioned, Scottie's at the top of that odds board. He is, currently 4-1. I'm sure we'll have an odds update tomorrow. Rory is plus 750, 7.5 to 1. Then you got Brooks Koepka at 14 to 1. Fourth on that odds list as of now is Xander Schauffele at 16 to 1. And Xander, on the one hand, here's what I want to do here is I want to go full prime first take era, Skip Bayless versus Stephen A. Smith. I want to know your opinion on whether or not Xander Schauffele has the clutch gene. Because here's my thing with Xander is, like, if this was a member guest tournament, I could pick any PGA Tour player, it might be this guy. He hasn't missed a cut in 2 years. He is so steady. Like, he's like a machine. But time and time again, it feels like he's in a position to win a marquee tournament. And I get that Rory just ran away with it today, and Rory played phenomenal. No one was going to beat Rory McIlroy today. But I wonder what opinions you have on whether or not Xander Schauffele can get it done in a marquee event or a major going forward.
Oh, he 100% can. There's no doubt about that. But I mean, just his year, I didn't realize how well he has played.
He's really, really good.
He's had 7 top 10s in 11 starts, and he's had 10 top 25s in 11 starts. So the consistency is 100% there. And I really do think that is so important for any player, just feeling like every time you tee it up that you're going to give yourself an opportunity. For Xander, I really do think I need to go on a little deeper dive. I think Trevor said on the broadcast today that he's had 7 54-hole leads, and he's converted 2 of them. Now that's 2 for 8. So it'd be fun to go back and look and see what the scoring average was for him on those days, and was it a situation like today where he just has had some terrible luck with players like Rory just lapping the field. So how many times did that happen? I'll have to go back and do a bit of a dive there, but I think I've mentioned this a couple times about Xander making the switch to Chris Como and trying to get a little bit more speed. You could see it. I mean, I know Rory was hitting it past him, but he was up there with him within 15 or 10 to 15 yards, which is really long. And his iron game is, I mean, I think he's probably the same irons length as Rory. So he's got that aspect of his game. I know his putter didn't show up today, but I'm telling you, that guy is going to win a major championship because he's got the consistency. He's got a very nice golf swing that's holding up under pressure and in major championships. And I personally think he's a top 5 putter in the world.
The stats bear that out.
I wouldn't have him outside of the top 5 with the putter. I just think his mechanics are so good, and nobody puts a better roll on the golf ball than he does. And it just looks the same over and over again. But to your point, does he have the clutch gene? Are they playing aggressive enough? I don't know right now, because it's hard. I need to do a little bit of research on the 54 hole leads
on the clutch gene, strokes gain, clutch gene. See what that bears out.
Because you know what he's really clutch at is finding a way to top 10. If he's 26 heading into Sunday, he'll finish 6th. He is the GOAT at finishing top 10, but finishing first, not quite the GOAT.
It's such an interesting thing, because I think it is, it's like he's the perfect argument centerpiece for, stats versus like feel or gut, where he's caught in this like middle ground where you look at all the stats and you're like, this guy is a machine. He's right up there. Are
you grouping him in with Cantlay? Are you trying to do this right now?
Well, I would, like, to me, like I would take him over in a pick'em over Cantlay.
Okay, gotcha.
Every single tournament, and including the majors. And that's not even like, I don't think you can really make an argument, given his recent form. Cantlay is of course is a top 20 player in the world, but I don't think there's any question you take Xander over him right now. For this major. And just, for the rest of the season until there's some massive change in form. But it's just so interesting. It's like, for a guy that, to your point, you look at all the stats and even the eye test too on the putting, where it's like he just puts a good roll on it every time. Mm-hmm. There was just some weird stuff down the stretch, and we saw it with the short birdie putt he missed at the Players, where he really could have had a chance on 17, stuff like that, where it's like, it was just uncharacteristic to see him make mistakes like that until it is characteristic. And it's just, his story is the guy that's just the best player that just can't get it done, when he's under the gun. And I'm not trying to be unfair to Xander here, because, again, I think he's a phenomenal player, and I think he's, but it's going to take winning one. And I wonder if he's going to have to, because he's won on the PGA Tour. It's not like that's the obstacle. It's like, what does he need to win before he wins a major? And does he need to win something in short? Like, it would have been so perfect for him this week to win this event and then say, boom, I got all the confidence in the world going into the PGA Championship, or even like, the U.S. Open at Pinehurst. I mean, I just feel like that's the one that he has to win, is just a tight, exacting test, a U.S. Open type setup, and the PGA Championship is more and more has become that in the last few years. So it would have been so perfect for this to be the sort of back-to-back buildup for him to win his first major. But here we are again, kind of asking and maybe he couldn't have done anything different today because Rory played that good. But it's just, I think you have to ask the question with Xander.
No, you definitely do. You definitely do. And, but you can't knock this guy as far as how good he is at the game of golf. I mean, I think every single PGA Tour player would take what he's done since he's turned pro. This guy
100%
he has made 150 cuts and he's had 173 starts. That is an 86% clip as far as every time you tee it up, you're playing the weekend. I know he played in no cut events, but still, that to me is just eye opening of how consistent he is. But we got to continue to see what Xander can do in these majors. But I like that he just keeps putting himself in position. One of these days it's going to fall the right way. I love Austin Kaiser. I love his game. So it could be as soon as next week, the PGA Championship. I mean, I wouldn't put it past him to win on that golf course. And I really think the U.S. Open will be a really good course for him too. I think Pinehurst is an awesome track for him to potentially get a first major on.
Just getting back to Rory quickly before we kind of wrap and toss to this Bob May interview. I mean, I know this is it is just 1 week in one sense, but to your point, some good vibes coming off of the Zurich Classic. He's starting to play better. He's trending these last few weeks. He's exactly where you'd want to be going into a major championship where he's won before. I wonder if there's anything about his game. Like what are the key indicators for you that tells you, hey, like this guy he's rounding into form. And, what do you think the rest of the year looks like in terms of him against Scottie? Because I think to kind of take it back to where we started, a lot of people had just said this year's a wash. Scottie's going to win whatever he wants to tee it up. And I wonder if you feel like the rest of the year, especially in the majors, looks a little differently now that we're seeing some form out of Rory. And does all that hinge on how he plays this week at Valhalla?
Well, I think last year it was all the putter. How many times did he hit such good shots on Sundays or Saturdays at major championships and just not be able to grab the tournament and be able to run away with tournaments when it seemed like he was hitting the shots to be able to do so. This year, the conversation hasn't been as much about the putter. He's had plenty of really solid weeks with the putter, but you saw him mention earlier in the year how much he struggled with his iron game. Go sees Butch Harmon, has some new feels that I think have finally shown up, and you could see it at setup. He just looks so comfortable. And I think there was a lot of left misses. So he's kind of found a way to get that out. I think the three, he didn't really feel great about taking spin off golf shots as well, which is always alarming for a pro, especially playing in the springtime. I imagine this is when all of the issues were happening early spring, when he was really struggling to hit his numbers. And when you're playing heavy winds and all you can really do is hit the club that is less, that hits it higher up in the air, gets affected more by the wind, hard to hit it pin high. And he was having a lot of left misses. So I think it's maybe because we're playing at the type of the year now where you can hit those full iron shots, doesn't have to hit as many 3/4 shots, or at least the ones in which you got 170 yards and you have 5 iron in your hand. So I think that caters to Rory as well, the warmer weather, the less winds. So it's the time of the year in which we've seen Rory McIlroy, start tuning it up plenty of the other years as well. And I mean, shoot, it's just wild how many times he's won too. We're in a pretty incredible period of golf right now with Rory and Scottie and the Tigers still playing. It's a lot of fun for a golf fan if we can figure out how to mesh these two tours at some point.
It is. And we will discuss a version of that on the back end of this upcoming Bob May interview that we're about to tee up here. And also, we're going to kind of further unpack this PGA Championship at another live show of sorts. I guess it's sort of a taped as live show, but it is similar to the show that you saw us do in Augusta at T-Bone Steakhouse. We have a thing for steakhouses, I guess, because we're going to Malone's in Louisville. Super pumped about that. They've been really gracious to host us in their is it their Churchill Downs room? It's like a themed room overlooking a bar. I think it's going to be a super cool backdrop. We have a special guest, which I don't know. Do we want to tease that guest, or do we want to wait until we confirm it?
And if he has to back out, he said to do it another time, but he's. Let's put him in a 99% end, so we might as well just tease it.
So Fat Perez will be joining us at Malone's in Louisville. Very excited about that. We're gonna do our usual. We're gonna preview the PGA Championship. We're gonna make our one and done picks, which I know now that we're back on fire, we're excited about those.
Fire.
We're back. We're back. We're all the way back. We're gonna maybe put together a little DFS lineup and kind of dig into some other things. I know you liked Wyndham early on. Wyndham kind of having a tough week, so we'll run through the full leaderboard there. Where we're going to go to next is an interview that we've already recorded that we're super pumped about. Bob May took Tiger Woods to a playoff in 2000 at Valhalla at the peak of his powers. So you and Bob went back and forth reliving those moments, talking about some of the crazy bounces, crazy shots that were hit as part of that playoff. And then he tells you a little bit about the course and things to look out for and just a general preview of what you all can expect this next week of the second major of the year. So let's kick it over right now to your conversation with Bob May. And on the back end, we'll come back to discuss the latest secret subcommittee that's going around the PGA Tour.
All right, guys, welcome back. We have Bob May, legend from the 2000 PGA Championship. This is I'm really excited about this conversation, Bob. And first off, thank you for taking the time. And I just kind of want you to just set the scene for us a little bit, taking us all the way back to 2000. What was the state of your game heading into the week? Did you see a week like that coming?
Well, I've been playing well. All year, kind of been playing pretty well. I just flew back from trying to defend. I won the British Masters in Europe in '99, so I went back to defend. I think I finished maybe 11th or 12th or something over there, and I flew straight from there into Valhalla. So, yeah, I've been playing well. I had a couple good tournaments that year. You know, I played well at the British Open. I think I finished 11th. I played well at Pebble at the U.S. Open, and then finished second at Memphis. So I had some good play going, and you know, I know that was going to happen that week. No, I wish I did, but I didn't. And you know, the first round was just a round of 72, and then you know, and then the next 3 days, obviously 366s in a row.
Woo!
You know, just putt started falling, and you know, before you know it, you end up there.
So, Bob, what was your first impressions of Valhalla Golf Club when you got on the property? You know, a lot of times as a pro golfer, you kind of mentioned that you had been playing well, but a lot of times you just get those good vibes when you're at a place that you just feel like it fits your eye, and that it just good vibes are just present. Did you kind of feel that way about Valhalla?
You know, I like the greens because they had a lot of like sections. You had to hit the ball to this part of the green or that part of the green. And I always felt that I was a very good iron player. So I kind of liked it because you had to be in the right part of the green to give yourself a good chance.
Man, I love that. And I you know, everybody talks about the 2000 PGA Championship, mainly because Tiger Woods that's kind of when he was at the beginning of the height of his power, going for his third major championship that year. Nobody had done that since Ben Hogan. Talk to us just about how nuts it was at that time, playing in an era in which Tiger Woods was at his peak.
I mean, playing in that era, you know, with Tiger in his peak, you see how long these kids hit it now. And Tiger was basically that long back then. And there really wasn't but maybe two or three other players that could really hit it out there with him. Not only was he long, but he was extremely straight. Okay. So now you got long and straight. And then not only was he long and straight, he also had great irons play. He also had a great short game and great putting. So, I mean, there wasn't a weak part of his game. You know, usually you could find something, but his game was so rounded. And, you know, I don't mean to be brash or anything, but I always, like I said, I thought I was a very good ball striker. And I can still remember a couple shots that he hit that just stick in my mind and that were very impressive. I mean, I can remember the 2-iron he hit on number 10. It was like 260 some yards, and he hit a 2-iron higher than I've ever seen anybody hit a 2-iron, and it never left the pin. Now it landed about a foot short and rolled back in the bunker, but still, it was just a phenomenal 2-iron. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Man, and going into that final round, Bob, you know, I imagine that it's easy to start to question yourself and thinking, okay, how am I going to beat this guy? Was it difficult for you to going into that round to sticking to your game plan? And I imagine the distractions that day just had to be insane too, with the amount of people that were cheering for Tiger.
Well, you know, going into the round that day, I basically told myself, we're going to play a different golf course. And what I meant by that is he's going to hit it so much longer than me that we're not even basically playing the same golf course. And I told myself, you know, you're good enough to shoot 66 the last 2 rounds. Just play your own game and see what happens. Don't get involved in his game. One, you can't hit it near as far as he can, not even close with the driver. You know, from a 6-iron or maybe a 7-iron down, I had a pretty strong angle of attack, so I de-lofted. I could, you know, hit it pretty long with those irons, but everything else, he was going to be so much longer than me. So I just told myself, you know, play your own game. Don't worry about what's going on. Just, you know, play the golf course the way you want to play it. He's going to play it a different way and, you know, see what happens at the end of the day. And that night when I went to sleep, I was basically just telling myself, he puts his pants on the same way you do, one leg at a time. So, just go out there. You've worked all this time to have an opportunity like this. And I was always taught by Eddie Mehrens and Tom Sargent to, play one shot at a time, one hole at a time. And my competition was the golf course, and see how bad you could beat the golf course. If you could beat the golf course, better than anyone else, then you'll win. But I can't control what Tiger was doing. He can't control what I was doing. So basically, the only thing I could control is my game.
And in this era now, I think one comparable maybe figure would be Brooks Koepka in major championships, and just his competitive edge and how tough he is, and that he doesn't really make mental mistakes. And honestly, what he kind of has a little bit is that intimidation factor that Tiger Woods has. And did you feel any of that from Tiger, in which, did he talk to you much at all that day?
You know what? We talked basically the whole front nine.
Oh, really?
And then the back nine, we both birdied 10, and we kind of just separated, okay, it's getting serious now. But you got to understand, Tiger and I both grew up in Southern California, and Tiger was 7 years younger than me, so I was very familiar with Tiger. And, I respect his game and all that, but I wasn't afraid of his game. Was I in awe of the shots he could hit? Absolutely, I was in awe. But like I said, I had more respect for the game, but I wasn't afraid of his game.
Yeah, that's a great point. And just to kind of just talk a little bit about that, just mental edge. And I was watching a clip here earlier today, and Tiger Woods referenced that both of you didn't make a mental mistake the entire day on Sunday. And I think a lot of times guys that went up against Tiger, that was one of the things that they would do, is just the mental side of the game. They would falter, but he credited you and how tough you were, not only from the physical side, but the mental side.
A lot of the guys might have looked like they kind of failed mentally. And I think the mental part that they did fail in is that they got in a slugfest with Tiger. Some of these other guys were bigger guys, longer hitters. And I think sometimes they got into more of a slugfest with them instead of just playing their game. And at that time, like I said earlier, he hit it so long, but he hit it so straight. And so you try to play up with them, and, when you start swinging too hard at it, they start going a little sideways. It didn't matter. He could swing as hard as he wanted, and it was still going straight.
And y'all both made those big putts on 18 for birdie to end up going in a playoff. When you finished and went to the scoring tent, did you know that it was a 3-hole playoff? I imagine you're so in the zone that, that's what I was curious about.
Well, no, we did. I don't think Tiger did either. I think we thought we were going back to 18, which I was fine with, because I was kind of like, okay, all the pressure is going to be on him. He should be able to reach it in 2, and I'll be the underdog like I have been all day, and all the pressure's on him, on it. And when we signed the scorecards, they said, okay, we're going back to 16. It's a 3-hole playoff this year. And I was like, oh my gosh. I already set my mind. I got ahead of myself and already set my mind that we're going back to 18. And unfortunately, that we didn't go back to 18, but we went back to 16. And it was a long day. We were out there for 5+ hours, and it's a little humid back there and warm, but I think we were both surprised. And then, of course, I didn't hit a good tee ball. And then he made that putt that every Pro-Am partner I play in pretty much runs and starts pointing at it. And then they do that. And I said, you guys really don't realize that's where it all started, was at that tournament. And they're like, oh, I just thought that was a Tiger thing. I said, no, it all started at that tournament.
On that hole.
They feel bad.
On that hole, too. Wow. That I can't imagine being there in that moment. When he was running and pointing towards the hole, had you ever seen anything like that in playing golf over how many years it's been?
You know what? I hadn't seen anything like that, being that the ball hadn't been in the hole yet. And actually, I thought it might just stop short on the left edge. I thought, oh man, did he run too soon?
Did he run too soon?
Then it just trickled in there. But, under that circumstance and the amount of time that we spent out there that day and to finally him make one and get ahead, because, he started off one shot ahead, and then I birdied the second hole and he bogeyed it. And then the rest of the day, it was pretty much I was ahead of him until he birdied 17.
Yep. And in that playoff, when you got to 16, you kind of mentioned your drive, but also where you left that chip shot. I just can't believe how good a touch that was. Was the lie as bad as it looked?
The lie was bad, but which actually was a benefit.
Because you could get it tumbling.
I could get it tumbling, exactly. You're a player, you understand. So the lie was bad, so I knew I got it on that first swell. It wasn't gonna have spin. It was just gonna take off and roll. So it was actually kind of a blessing in disguise.
Wow. And then 17. So that I didn't remember this when I went back and watched this. So Tiger, he hit first, it looked like, and he hit it out to the right. And that, if you've never been to Valhalla, that side of the right side of the fairway really falls off almost a cliff down a cart path.
How it didn't go down there, I have no idea.
And
I have no idea, because that's the only drive he hit off the line other than 18. That ball was wide and long off. I thought he was going to be dead. I thought he was going to be down there by 14 tee box.
So you're thinking when that ball's in the air and where it lands, it hits the spectator, stays on top to where he has a chance to really just punch it onto the back of the green, hit it over. But if it ends up down the hill, you're probably thinking in your head, man, if I just play clean golf, I probably win this thing now. Like, the advantage is totally in my court.
You know as well as I do, if that thing goes down that hill, he's gonna work just to make 5 from there.
Yeah.
That would be a hell of a 5 if he made it from down there. If it got down there, because he might have had to pitch out back into 14 fairway, and then he had the strength maybe to get it up over and back into 17 fairway.
That's right. And then 18 too. I mean, those were weird drives. Like where your ball ended up, that lie looked terrible, and then Tiger's looked like it was going to be in that left fescue area. And how far back did his drive really go on 18?
You know what? It's kind of funny, because when we got done, I never saw Tiger and myself. I guarantee you, Tiger never saw what his ball did. We couldn't see it from the tee box because it went over the hill. And when I got done playing, I remember, Tiger went one way with the press. I went another way with the press. And Ken Venturi goes, "What do you think happened to that ball in 18? I go, "What are you talking about?" And, they had the headsets on like you have on. And I had my headset on with Ken Venturi and Jim Nance. And you hear over the headphones, "Stop it, Ken. Don't need to go there." And he's like, "No, let's show it again." And he goes, "So what do you think happened there?" And Mr. Venturi pushed that issue of wanting me to see because we never saw that happen. We didn't see anything from the tee box because you couldn't see over the hill what happened. And I was like, well, I have no idea what happened. But, it was a weird bounce.
Yeah, because it went straight backwards, right? No?
Right.
Is that,
yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of people think that young kid or young gentleman hit it, threw it, kicked it, whatever.
Oh, okay. Where was it heading? Where was that ball heading? If it doesn't hit
in the bushes, or it was headed in the bush or out of bounds, right? Out of bounds, right on the other side of that bush.
I did not know that.
Honestly, if you've been there, that's a pretty steep hill. That's a real steep hill. I think it just hit and it took off back down the hill. My whole thing is, there was enough people around there to say that kid moved it or say something to an official. I think at that point of the day, everyone, there wasn't just surely Tiger rooters or Bob May rooters. There were people like, "Hey, this is just a great tournament. It's coming out good. We're enjoying the competition."
Yeah. Wow. I didn't. I mean, just those bounces on 17, hitting a spectator, and then 18, the crazy bounce. These are all things that
Well, I mean, a lot of people didn't realize when he punched out on 17, you saw it, and it hit the cart path and jumped over the rough.
Yep.
And
I was wondering,
rolled up onto the green and then over it.
because how low it came up, I was like, oh, that's not getting through the rough, and then hits the path and skips over. I mean, you got to get lucky to win sometimes, and obviously Tiger did.
No,
got
there's
a little
always
lucky.
good breaks. Yeah. You tell me a guy that hasn't won a tournament with a good break, right?
Yeah. I mean, you're exactly right. And 18, gosh, I mean, that putt that you even hit, because you hit a wedge shot that took the right slope all the way down, and the camera angle they used was fantastic because it showed just how severe that slope was. And for you to get that line and speed almost perfect, I mean, I can't imagine just how in the zone you were to be able to judge that putt so perfectly.
No, my putting was really coming around right then, and to pull that putt off and almost make it. It was a great putt, but it was just not quite hard enough.
Yeah, gosh.
First one I hit so hard in regulation that I was afraid on the next.
That's the old classic second guy. So, I mean, Bob, where we talk about Valhalla now in 2024, what are the fans kind of expecting to see? Because it's been since Rory won the PGA, and then everybody remembers the PGA that we've been talking about. What's your favorite hole out there, and what are fans expecting to see with Valhalla?
Gosh, my favorite hole. There's so many good holes out there. In my personal opinion, I like 12. Where you have to, you can't hit a driver. You have to position it out there and then hit down to the green. I like the short hole 13.
Yeah,
and then I love 15. I think 15 is a great hole on the back nine. 18's a good fun hole. They have taken a lot of slope out of that green. At least when I was back there probably 8 years ago, they took a lot of slope out of that green. But then we go to the front nine. I mean, 2's a good hole. 3's, there are just a lot of good holes on that golf course. And the only hole I didn't like was 7 because I couldn't take it over. I couldn't take it over the.
Oh, yeah. Okay, left.
The green. Everyone else was, the real long guys could go left and then go over it. I would go left and then I'd have to hit out to the right a little bit. So
that's, in Valhalla too, it's a golf course that's produced some incredible television. So I expect to see, some of those same types of moments that we've seen in the past years, where there was the Ryder Cup or the PGA in 2015. So
I think it'll be an exciting tournament for sure.
Well, who are you taking?
Gosh, oh man. How can you not? Scottie Scheffler, he's amazing now, right?
He's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. It's great to see him. The media was kind of on him about his putting, and you hear it enough, and then you start questioning yourself, and you could see that he was questioning himself a little bit. It's great to see the mental work that he has done to put that out of his mind and to be back to where he's at, because it could get in your head for a while, and he's strong enough and smart enough to just put a blind eye to it and say, you know what? I was just in a slump and I'm ready to go again. And there's so many good young players. You could probably name
there's so
20
many,
people and they could all win it.
They sure can. The storylines are great. You have Jordan Spieth having a chance to win his career Grand Slam, and then you have Justin Thomas being from Louisville, who actually I read was an 8-year-old at that PGA back in 2000 in the clubhouse. When you were doing your media, you didn't happen to bump into little Justin Thomas, did you?
No, I didn't. I didn't know about him then, but it was funny because I saw an interview that he was at that tournament.
Yep.
So.
Yep, his dad being a PGA of America teacher and being from Louisville area, they were at that event, and it probably was the event that realized JT he wanted to be a professional golfer. But watching Tiger Woods win, and Bob, do you think we'll ever see Tiger Woods win another major?
I would never bet against him.
Yeah.
I think if his leg was in good shape where he could walk and make it, I don't see why not. I mean, he still hits the ball good. He can still do it all. I just think, unfortunately, his health is holding him back. I think 1-2 rounds. I mean, maybe if they gave him a cart, because walking is really, it takes it out of you, and especially when you have an injury like him. But the thing that people don't understand, he can still hit the golf ball. It's not hindering him so much as the golf swing. It's the actual 5 miles of walking that you're doing up and down hills and things like that. So I think, that's the only thing that's holding him from winning, because I still think his game is good enough to win. And he still hits it out there with these young kids, and with the injuries that he's had, from the car wreck injury to just his back swinging to his knee, from swinging, it's pretty impressive.
Oh, I know we all want to see Tiger Woods back in the mix, and it would get a lot of butts on their couch watching it on TV if he's anywhere close to the lead on Sunday. But I think we're in tune for a fantastic PGA Championship. And Bob, are we going to potentially see you in Louisville this next coming week, or are you going to be watching it from home?
I'll actually be watching it from home. Yeah, I was. I didn't get any invitations or any gigs set up for out there, which I thought I might have, but I haven't, so I'll watch it. I'll watch it from Las Vegas or here in Encinitas.
Well, there you go. I imagine you would have gotten a hero's welcome. It's very odd, I imagine, coming back and feeling like you're a champion, because everybody knows who you are. But it's one of the most famous and iconic tournaments in professional golf history, and I imagine it was a lot of fun to be a part of.
It was great to be a part of it. Ken Venturi said, this is the greatest thing ever. And I was like, oh, come on. It wasn't like, Watson and Nicholas at Turnberry, or, I can remember Nicholas and Aoki at the US Open, and he's like, oh no, it is. And I'm like, to me, those are the things I remember as a kid.
Yep.
And Ken was like, no, it is. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And, I guess it was a pretty good moment, because it's, 24 years later, you and I are still talking about it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I remember as a kid, as I said at the beginning of this interview. So thank you for creating a fun memory for me. And thank you, Bob, for taking this time. We're super excited to relive some magic of Valhalla this coming week.
Well, thank you. And thank you for thinking of me and giving me a call.
All right, Bob, we'll talk to you next time, and all the best, and enjoy the time at the beach. See you, buddy.
All right. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. That was Bob May discussing the 2000 PGA Championship with Smylie. A lot of cool stuff in there. What were your highlights of that conversation?
Well, I mean, somebody's got to give Bob May to Louisville, right? I think that was the big highlight for me, right? Is that he's going to be watching at home on his couch. I mean, I would have thought somebody would have had Bob come in his chalet and just kind of reminisce and talk about the old days.
That was a little surprising to me as well, because he's a bit of a cult hero, I can imagine, in that part of the world. Although, given what we saw and heard in that interview, the birds chirping out there in beautiful Encinitas down in Southern California, not a bad place to watch the PGA Championship either. So I think wherever he is, we'll be thinking about him, and super cool to hear you all discuss that at length. And also, good luck to him. I guess this episode is going to drop when he's playing his qualifier. The U.S. Senior Open. So let's see if the Smylie Show bump works on Bob May.
let's see. If I was Bob and you get the late invite, I would wear the exact Saturday and Sunday outfits that I wore for the PGA Championship in 2000. The pink hat, just clothes head to toe. That way everybody knows who I am. It's like, hey, it's Bob May. And it's like, yeah.
I sincerely hope that whatever Sunday Red scripted for Tiger this week, it includes some rendition of the outfit he wore on Sunday, where he walked that putt into the hole and pointed at it. That'd be pretty sweet.
Bob, this would be great if he set up a little booth next to that tree on 18 and had maybe a little card out in front and said, Tiger's ball was thrown, prove me wrong, or something like that. That would be that would be amazing.
Yes, or like hired a kid to kick it out of the very.
What did we decide happened there? Like the ball was thrown? Is that where did we land on that?
Where we landed on that was that Bob felt like there was no funny business. Essentially, just that there were too many people, too many spectators around at that point in the day, and that the crowd was, of course, pro Tiger, but not necessarily just all there for Tiger, and that someone would have chimed in for the sanctity of the competition and would have spoken up if something weird happened there. And I tend to believe in there. I think it was pre cell phone era, so some sketchy stuff could have happened, but
just
I'll take
less camera angles too. That's another thing too, because I guarantee you now there would have been a camera angle to show exactly what happened there.
So, Smylie, let me hard turn this now. Are you an It's Always Sunny guy? You watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
I'm a big. I use a lot of their GIFs.
Okay.
Are you a GIF or GIF guy? I'm GIF guy.
I'm a GIF guy.
Okay,
but I think that's probably. It's good for the show. The one of us is a GIF guy, one's a GIF guy.
I feel like you're on the right side of history, but I'm gonna just have to be the guy to be the GIF guy.
I was working on like a social production team at ESPN when that like announcement was made, and my boss was like, yeah, it's called a GIF now, and I was like, I'm not calling it that. It's a GIF. So thanks,
okay.
But yeah. So there you go. So there's a detour there. So then you would be familiar with the Pepe Silvio GIF from It's Always Sunny, where Charlie Day has the big web of yarn and is pointing at it.
Yes. Yeah.
That's where I am right now with the PGA Tour, the committees, the boards, the negotiations with the PIF. I mean, prior to this week, heading in with the whole Rory McIlroy situation. Of course, he goes out and wins a golf tournament. But on the front end of this week, the topic of discussion was there were rumors that Webb Simpson had cleared the way for Rory to rejoin the policy board and take Webb Simpson's seat on that board. And then it was revealed in the pre-tournament press conferences and media availability after rounds that Rory was not going to be rejoining the policy board over the reported objections from other players on that board. Specifically, the players named were Tiger Woods, Patrick Cantlay, and Jordan Spieth. And so then we had that whole wrinkle, and we're like, all right, what's going to happen here? But then Rory reveals that even though he's no longer on the policy board, he has joined a transaction subcommittee that will be negotiating with the PIF alongside some SSG investors. And he is one of 3 players on that subcommittee. Tiger, Adam Scott are the others. So, I mean, yes, I'm Pepe Silvioing right now. I don't quite know what to make of all this. Let's just begin with your overall thoughts, processing all the information as it relates to Rory's involvement with PGA Tour negotiations that we found out in this past week.
Well, it was kind of wild to follow. I was a little annoyed, disappointed, frustrated, whatever word you want to use, when Rory at his press conference at Wells Fargo this week announced that he was not going to be on the Wells Fargo due to, at the time, was predicted to be like Patrick Cantlay, who didn't want him to be on the board. We knew that there were potential issues between the two guys. I don't know how cordial they are. I'm not here to report the drama between any of the players and Rory McIlroy. But I have been leaning more towards someone like Rory, and he's obviously one of the most influential players in the game. He speaks his mind. He's one of the best players in the game and one of the best players to ever play the game. So for him to not be involved in the conversations in a time in which you feel like you need to have a guy like Rory involved in the conversations, that to me was very disheartening. I definitely see from the policy board standpoint, it's like, hey, there is, we do have rules in which players roll on and roll off, but then you also kind of look at, wait, didn't they kind of add another spot just so Tiger could be on the policy board. So there's ways around all of this. I definitely think there was an issue with Rory coming back on the policy board full time, which obviously came out. But with that being said, I do think it's awesome that the transactional subcommittee came out. And by the way, when he was playing so well on Sunday, I typed in on GIF transactional or transactional. I was like, there's got to be a really cool GIF here that I can use on X or Twitter with about Rory McIlroy in a transaction. There was nothing that was that great. But
shocker.
I was thinking, I was like, oh, maybe I'll find something. But with that being said, I'll leave you with this, is that I think it's fantastic that Rory is going to be involved in the conversations with PIF, and probably for his sake, he gets to avoid a lot of the other stuff you have to do with the policy board. Doesn't have to be on as many phone calls, but still has a voice in the game, and then also gives credit to all the guys that are on the policy board now that have, they hung tough. Mm-hmm. They didn't quit when things were not going their way like Rory did. So I can imagine there's some animosity from those guys. They're like, hey man, you left us high and dry. And then everything that you did pretty much since then has really not helped us from a leverage standpoint. So I think that there's a little bit of still frustration from a lot of the policy board players that had plenty of calls that they probably had to hop on being like, did y'all see what Rory said this time? It's not that he's wrong. It's just like it needs to be much more guided in that whose team are you on? And I think that was the frustration from the PGA Tour policy board side.
It's not that he's wrong. It's just what you can or can't say in public when you're conducting a negotiation like that. And it's also not that he's wrong, but there are just going to be differences of opinion on this thing. There's no right or wrong that we know of right now until a deal gets done that you can point back and say that person handled it the right way. I think the most interesting sort of subdynamic in this whole thing is Rory and Jordan Spieth. And it's interesting to me that Rory, kind of referenced, he was asked about this whole relationship, and he was saying kind of what we're saying about Rory as it pertains to Jordan's comments at the AT&T Pro-Am, where it was come right off the announcement of the deal with SSG, and they were asking Jordan about deal specifics, and Jordan basically said, well, we certainly are going to still have a conversation with the PIF, and we're going to further those negotiations, but it's not like we need to do it anymore because we have the SSG money. And Rory noted that as that may be well and true, but it's not something you say out loud when you're trying to cut a deal with those people. And I think, Jordan may or may not have said this on the record, but I'm sure he feels similarly about the statements that Rory made, in public about what the tour should or shouldn't do, and the way that changed the leverage that the tour had and having this negotiation with the PIF. So it's interesting. And I don't think either of them are necessarily wrong. I mean, I think that what I agree with as it pertains to Rory's point of view is that I want to see a unification of professional golf. And it seems that Rory is more skewed in that direction now of let's find a way to get a deal done, whatever that looks like. I mean, I said something to that effect this last week on the show where I was like, let these guys come back with minimal penalties because that's actually going to be the most effective thing at, killing live, right? Like to get them to come back and they play here instead of saying, you got to go play Corn Ferry Tour. Well, it's never going to happen. So I agree with Rory on that, but I also can fully understand the hesitations of, anyone on the other side of the fence has gone through all this work and try to put together this deal, and then are hearing these public comments being made. To that point, it was interesting that Rory basically said, when asked about the disagreements with Tiger, where he said, hey, look, friends can disagree. We had a nice long 45-minute chat about it, and just it was good to hear his viewpoint. I'm sure it was good for him to hear mine. I wonder what you make of that relationship between probably the two most important stakeholders in the PGA Tour, in terms of player public face between Tiger and Rory. What you make of that relationship going forward, both in the fact that they will no longer be together on the policy board, but they will be working together on this transaction subcommittee.
Well, I think it is very important that the two are having these discussions, and I think Rory said something after one of his rounds this week, saying that does a deal need to get done? Well, no, but would it be good for professional golf if it does get done? Yes. And I think just referencing that both tours can continue to go on in the way in which they're heading, but I just continue to think, how many more guys does it continue to take where it's just, hey, it's just two more guys. It's Tony Finau, it's Victor Hovland this time. It's you just can't continue to lose 2, 3, 4 guys every single year. It's just not a winning formula if the PGA Tour is ever going to continue to be considered to be the best tour in the world. And right now it's very debatable.
Yeah, I mean, it's the ratings reflect that. I think just the interest past the majors reflects that. So I guess that, and maybe again, we're just guessing as what happened behind the scenes there and how this whole thing shook out. But maybe that was ultimately why Rory ended up on this subcommittee instead of the policy board. Is that the subcommittee seems to reflect a willingness to try to cut this deal with the PIF and bring these two sides back together and hammering out those details. And a guy like Rory is clearly more suited to that conversation than a guy like Patrick Cantlay might be. But policy board is more suited towards representing the interests of the larger PGA Tour membership and protecting guys that may feel like, we don't want to just welcome these guys back in with open arms. Whether or not that's conducive to unifying professional golf, they do have to look out for the interest of, that subset of guys. That's their duty as members of the policy board. So I can understand all parties involved and why they end up where they end up. It's just one of these things, man, where it's like, you sent me, we were exchanging screenshots on this thing, and it just felt like we were back, last summer where we were, having on a antitrust lawyer to explain to us the minutia. It's like, I don't want to think about these things, man. I don't want to think about subcommittees and committees upon committees. Like, I would just like to watch golf and talk about that, and so it just is yet another sign of the times where we have to report on it. People have to talk about it. There are elements of drama, involved. Yeah. It's fun, it's juicy, but at the end of the day, it's like, can we just figure this thing out so we don't have to talk about this type of stuff anymore?
I'm with you.
Come on.
And I think the one thing that I want to ask you as a fan, if you watch the Wells Fargo today, or even a couple of these other events this year that have been these runaway winners, which we've had these blowout wins, and then we've had, like for instance, this week it was a 2-horse race. So I think from a TV perspective, that is when it's nice to have the team aspect. It's like it gives you another reason to care about what Sung J M is doing or what Ben An is doing. These players that are so far back, but if there is another element to it from a team side, that just adds another component to it that I'm growing onto. I think still the most important thing is who won the Wells Fargo Championship, which is Rory McIlroy. I think that always needs to be the number one thing for the PGA Tour. I think it's, that's been what it's always been. It's very traditional, but I do think it's a cool thing to kind of follow on a day in which it was just incredible golf between two guys that turned out to be on the back nine, just one guy. But I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think about this from a couple different viewpoints. Scott Fawcett of Decade Golf made a point along the lines of, this type of leaderboard is what you get when you have a limited field. Where there are less guys playing in the event, and therefore, there's more of a chance that you get two guys running away instead of a fuller top of the leaderboard where, if Xander starts having an off day, there's someone else who can get there and press Rory and still make it interesting. I think that's a fair point. I think the team golf aspect is also an interesting one because I almost go back to our discussion about Live Adelaide and how, even though, and this is no offense to Brendan Steele, but even though he's the guy at the top of the individual leaderboard.
It wasn't even a thing for me. It was about the Rippers winning.
It's about Ripper. And so I think there is definitely something to that. I just think in general, it's you don't have to. It would be my opinion that you could have fuller fields by bringing the live guys back into the fold in some way, shape, or form. You're just adding 10 or so guys to these fields. Like, I would love to see these type of events get to closer to 100-person field.
That's where I land too. I'm right at 100.
So I think that there are a couple different things I'd like to see done differently to still give it the elite sense, but also not end up where you end up today, where it's like, oh man, like, and all credit to Rory, he ran away with it, but it's like Xander starts losing, and then it's like, all right, well, we can just turn this off now because the thing's over. And I think that that's tough, and I do think team golf could help with that. I think that's a good point made. But this goes back to when we're reconstructing our new combined Live and PGA Tour, new Platinum Tour, it seems like we're differentiating team events from these other signature events. But you're saying maybe still have them combined in the way that Live currently is set up.
I don't know. Just something to talk about.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily suggesting. I was just thinking on a day in which you had a runaway, like, would it have been cool to have another aspect to follow? Would I have cared? I don't know. I was just really excited to watch Xander and Rory battle it on Sunday. And it was an awesome battle. Just think about on the the 7th hole of the par 5, Rory, 3-putt par, and Xander makes an eagle. You're thinking, oh, it's Xander's day. Hold my beer. Rory then goes 3-3-3 the next 3 holes, and then the thing is just over. And what an incredible bunker shot he hit on 15, making that for eagle. By the way,
unreal,
just so good. So,
especially where that pin was. I mean, that was just like,
it was just saucy. But just another thing to for us to continue to try to solve the puzzle. The Always Sunny in Philadelphia GIF.
The Pepe Silvio yarn board, we'll call it. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's, it is interesting because I think some of this stuff is like, I just want to start taking yarn off the board, man. Like, it's like, some of these things, like, what do you think about this? Like, I don't know. Like, we're so far down a rabbit hole now. Like, I guess if you're pressing me on it, like, I have an answer for that thing. But like, really what I just want to see is an ecosystem where with everybody together, the right path just makes sense. And that's what I guess my overall feeling with a lot of this stuff is like, we're talking about certain hypotheticals and you're like, well, that way's kind of contrived. That other way's kind of contrived. And it's like, it doesn't make sense because the big obvious solution is let's not have 2 competing pro tours,
Yeah. And right now with the PGA Tour, you have as a player an option to play in any event that you want to play in. Live Golf Tour, from what I understand, the contract that you sign, you have to play every single event on that calendar. Mm-hmm. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, and if you haven't seen this, don't worry about it, but I think Rory mentioned something about a contract PGA Tour player in which, hey, I'm not against being told where I have to play.
I've seen this. I think there is a bit of irony there because if you go back 1 year and the first iteration of the signature event, the designated event, there was this like, Rory was part of the ideation process there to a certain degree, and it was agreed, hey, we're going to trial this. And you can only skip one of these or you're fined this large sum of money. You don't collect some large chunk of your PIP money. And so Rory, of course, skips the Century at the beginning of the year. Then he goes to the Masters, misses the cut, and he pulls out of the RBC Heritage. And it felt a little bit, feels a little bit ironic to hear comments like that when he was the guy that didn't even stick to the thing.
Then you get a fine. Then you just get a fine.
And that's how that might be any other. That might have been an easy calculation for Rory. Where he said, you know what, I'm good. I don't need the money. That's fine. Like, I'll take the fine. I need this week off. That's fine. But that's the thing that I think is interesting is I think it could work. And I think in this new Platinum Tour world we're constructing, I think it has to work that way because you're basically saying, hey, there are only 18 events that really matter, or 14 events that really matter. So we need you guys to all be here, barring some huge injury or other conflict. But yeah, it's you know,
I think it's going to be a better product because the Byron Nelson this year, the Mexico Open, all of these events that are cognizant, they're just not the level in which the highest level of professional golf should be. It's depleted fields, and there is a place for this in professional golf. It just doesn't need to be the top level. So I think for any golf sicko that loves watching golf, just like we do, we're always going to pay attention. And honestly, I'm probably going to care about that tour just as much as I care about the Platinum Tour, although I'll be talking more about the Platinum Tour. I like Chris Goddard. We haven't even mentioned that today. Like he's a player that 100% I thought was going to win this year on the PGA Tour. If you talked with us with James Nitties earlier this year, breaking down that Korn Ferry Tour class, he was one of the guys that I predicted to be just I played with him in Puerto Rico, and that's what I realized. I think this was my last start. Him and I were paired together, and it's like, you know what? I think it's time for me to take a break. This guy has it's a Cameron Champ ball flight thing. It flies 320. It's not high up in the air, just absolutely smashes it. And it hasn't been a good year for Chris. Has not been a good year for Chris at all. But it was really cool to see him go out and support Austin Eckroat at the Cognizant this year on Sunday, actually Monday morning. He went, watched, and followed him around. So it was, just to see a guy support his friend, and then later on in that year, go and get a win as well. The talent's there. He's just got to continue for his game to mature, because the talent is just absurd.
Yeah, I mean, I think to take that point and apply it to what we're talking about, it's like, just make the story authentic. Just make don't tell me the story is something different than what I know it to be because I'm watching it. Like, just make it clear, like, this is the Platinum Tour, this is the Premium Tour, and we know the storylines that are associated with that. And then this sort of second level is like the upstart, whatever, however you want to brand that. It's the tour where, like, guys with a dream and who can play their way to the top tier kind of get their chance to do that in a way that's, maybe more, I think you have to do some marketing around that, but you can do it because it's almost like a hybrid of the current PGA Tour and what the Korn Ferry Tour is now, or the DP World Tour. I mean, I think there are ways where you can creatively use all the partnerships that you have in place in this sort of what was this framework deal with the PGA Tour and the PIF and the DP World Tour to really create something compelling in terms of a storyline. But just don't tell me that this is the story of this tournament when I know it's not the story of that tournament. Because I'm watching it, it's just not compelling in that way. So I think it'll be, they have the right set of minds to do it. It's just like, can we clear all the hurdles that we spent the past 25 minutes discussing with the guys who are in these boardrooms trying to make these deals happen, and the way they conflict and the way they disagree? It's like, can we just make all that work to get to the place we need to go to make this thing compelling and authentic once again? And I think we can do it. I just hope it's sooner rather than later. So, all
right, Charlie, you can do it.
For what that's worth, Charlie Hulme believes you can do it. So
he is all in on the transactional committee, and I'm here for it. We need T-shirts. We need T-shirts.
We need transaction subcommittee T-shirts. I'm sure someone's already printed those, but we need to show up in Louisville with those shirts on. That feels like a good place as any to end this episode. So just as a reminder, we will be in Louisville this entire next week. We're so fired up about this, doing the preview show, as previously mentioned, at Malone's Steakhouse in Louisville. And then we're working on some fun little locations for our daily recap journals this next week. We got a couple different things in play, and we'll see how those shake out. But Fat Perez at Malone's, that's happening on Tuesday. That episode should drop in your feeds on Wednesday morning on both YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And then, of course, stay tuned for our content all week long, live from Louisville. So we appreciate you watching and listening as always, and we're excited to get into PGA Championship week with you starting right now. We'll talk to you soon.
I listen to this podcast. It's really cool. And
all of our Louisville fans and subscribers, but make sure you like and subscribe.
It's cool to see what you guys are doing. I know golf fans appreciate it, but we do too, so please keep it up.
For all the good people of YouTube, like and subscribe.
you guys have some good takes. So I'm happy to come on and shoot the